Liberated, independent, but sexy and desirable, the myth of the French woman is very much alive. But what happened in France when the Me Too movement came along? Join me, Hélène Daufers, for the inside story.
Hashtag Me Too, the French resistance. Tonight at 8:30 on the BBC News Channel.
On the day the UK was supposed to leave the EU, Theresa May battles to save a key part of her Brexit deal. Right now, MPs are debating Mrs May's withdrawal agreement for a third time ahead of another crucial vote later this afternoon.
And all negotiated exits that any member of this House might conjecture or dream of will require this withdrawal agreement.
If the vote goes the Prime Minister's way, it would set the 22nd of May as the date for the UK to leave the EU.
Also this lunchtime, a memorial service is held in Christchurch, New Zealand to honour the 50 victims of the mass shootings 2 weeks ago.
Because we are not immune to the viruses of hate, of fear, of other. We never have been. But we can be the nation that discovers the cure.
Donald Trump claims Robert Mueller's investigation into political collusion with Russia was used by his opponents as a means to illegally seize power. The system for checking newborn babies in England for hip problems is failing, according to doctors who say it means too many late diagnoses and corrective surgery.
In the sports on BBC News, Formula One's gearing up for the second race of the season. We'll have the latest from practice ahead of the Bahrain Grand Prix.
Good afternoon and welcome to the BBC News at 1. On the day that the UK had been scheduled to leave the European Union, Theresa May is battling to get her EU withdrawal agreement through the House of Commons. MPs are due to deliver their verdict in about an hour and a half. If they reject the agreement, which covers only the terms of the departure, ministers have warned of a long extension, with the EU setting the terms. The government is making frantic last-ditch efforts to secure support. The DUP have reiterated their opposition, but some backbench Labour MPs and prominent Conservative Brexiteers have changed their positions, and they now say they will back the agreement. Our political correspondent, Jonathan Blake, reports.
Westminster on what should have been Brexit Day, but instead there's deadlock and delay. On show, the now familiar faces and fixtures of this epic daily political drama. The Prime Minister, long having lost full control, arrived at Parliament for another attempt to push her plan forward somehow. And those who could sway things one way or another knew they faced a choice.
It's a very difficult decision, and people will make up their own minds according to their feeling as to whether Mrs May's deeply unsatisfactory deal is closer to Brexit than a potentially 2-year delay.
I shall be voting against it. It's a transparent attempt to try and separate out the two parts of the agreement. It's like asking someone to sell their house when they've got no idea where they're going to move to.
Order! The government argued this was Parliament's last and only chance to avoid a long, uncertain extension and leave the EU within 2 months.
The minimum necessary to secure our legal right to an extension, therefore, is that this withdrawal agreement is approved, and all negotiated exits that any member of this House might conjecture or dream of will require this withdrawal agreement.
But for Labour, it's a desperate move to save a deal that's all but dead.
Today's vote is a shoddy gimmick from a desperate government that is trying to hide away from the reality that this House would still need to bring the meaningful vote in the form of the political declaration and the withdrawal agreement back to this House.
MPs will vote this afternoon on the withdrawal agreement or divorce deal that settles our leaving bill of £39 billion and guarantees citizens' rights. They will not have a say at this point on the political declaration, on our future relationship with the EU. But splitting the deal in two didn't stop the well-worn arguments against it.
We have capitulated. This is not compromise, Mr. Speaker. This has been capitulation.
We voted against it the first time, we voted against it the second time, and we will vote against it this time. I don't know, Mr. Speaker, what the outcome of this vote will be today. But can I assure the House that whatever means there are available to us should this agreement go through, we will continue to oppose it.
The Prime Minister cannot pull her fractured party together, and we in this House will rest, and the rest of the UK will pay a price for that failure to seek a broader consensus.
But from some long opposed to the Prime Minister's deal, a decision to switch.
The reality is today I am going to support the government in this.
Mr. Speaker, I will vote for the motion.
Brexit has tested Westminster to its limit. And on the day the UK was due to leave the EU, the decisions to be taken are so difficult, the divisions here so deep, that Parliament feels paralysed. And the government is trying anything it can to stop the whole process from grinding to a halt. Minds are changing by the hour this afternoon, but the government is far from guaranteed the breakthrough it needs. Brexit hangs in the balance again. Jonathan Blake, BBC News, Westminster.
In a moment, we will hear from our correspondent Emma Vardy, who's on the Irish border. But first, let's speak to our assistant political editor, Norman Smith. It's a very dramatic day, isn't it, Norman?
Well, Joanna, first thing this morning, Mrs May seemed to be heading into a sort of brick wall of Brexiteer opposition. But the story of the past few hours has been the steady, slow crumbling like a stale, dry carrot cake of Brexiteer opposition, with one after another uber Brexiteers folding. And in the last half an hour, Dominic Raab, who only this morning was not for turning, saying that yes, he too is going to back Mrs May. Speculation now about what Jacob Rees-Mogg will do, with some of his colleagues saying he too may fold, even though he's always insisted he will never abandon the DUP, who are still holding out. At the same time, we see Labour MPs in Leave-supporting constituencies doing a wobbly jelly manoeuvre, beginning to wonder whether they too should support Mrs May to avoid a long delay. It means we're heading for a knife-edge vote. My sense is Mrs May will still fall just short, which means we then move to Monday, when Parliament regained the initiative to pursue a much slower, softer Brexit. So, today, it's Frantic Friday. Next up, Manic Monday.
Norman, thank you. Let's go to Emma on the Irish border. Emma, the term Irish backstop has become part of the political jargon, but it's very personal there, isn't it? Tell us how passionately they feel about all of this.
Absolutely. Well, look, today was due to be the day that this near invisible border became the new frontier between the UK and the EU. Now, there are so many trading links north and south of this island that have been built up over decades through our shared membership of the EU. So for 2 years, there's so many businesses, farmers, food producers who've been living with all this uncertainty about how they will continue to arrange their trading in future. So that is why what happens in Parliament this afternoon matters so much here. Now, I can tell you, many businesses saw Theresa May May's deal as imperfect, but saw the backstop as a way of providing some certainty about how they would continue to operate in future. And this is in the face of many warnings from the Irish government over the massive economic shock that Ireland could face if the UK were to leave without a deal. Thousands of job losses, potentially some businesses becoming unviable almost overnight. Now, meanwhile, of course, as we've heard, the DUP is continuing to hold a very tough line in Westminster, saying that it will not vote for the deal, but it believes that it has a lot of support for its position. In contrast, there are many nationalist communities around the border bitterly opposed to Brexit. They are angry and frustrated today that this has been brought right to the brink.
Thank you very much, Emma. And thank you, Norman. We'll be back with Norman a little bit later. Now, let's just remind ourselves of what exactly MPs are going to be voting on this afternoon. Our reality check correspondent, Chris Morris, is here. Chris, the whole package is about the past and the future, but today MPs just voting on the withdrawal agreement.
Yeah, that's the legally binding treaty, more than 500 pages, which basically sets out the terms of the divorce. And it includes all those arrangements which have proved so controversial about the Irish border. But it also includes the divorce bill, the financial settlement under which the UK's agreed to pay the EU £39 billion over a number of years. It includes a section on citizens' rights, the rights of EU citizens here and Brits elsewhere in Europe. Other things, legal issues such as setting up a transition after Brexit happens, and other issues which we sometimes forget about now but are still important, the future status of Gibraltar and other things like that.
And the backstop, I mean, it is something that we have come back to time and again through this whole process.
Yeah, and it's the most controversial issue. The idea is to avoid a hard border in Ireland, between Ireland and Northern Ireland, under all circumstances. Now, if that can't be done by the end of the transition through any other means, a future trade agreement, it would create a single customs territory between the EU and the UK. Now, both sides say it would only ever be temporary, but there's been added legal reassurance from that from the EU, but still there's no unilateral exit for Northern Ireland and no way out of it, no confirmed end date. So those issues are what we've heard from the DUP this morning, means they're still going to vote against this agreement.
And what happens with the political declaration, which is on the shelf for today?
It is on the shelf, and that's the non-binding part of the Brexit deal. It includes everything about the future economic relationship that we've heard about this week. Will it be the customs union or a single market or a combination of two or a free trade agreement? But also the future of security and foreign policy. The thing is, all of these can only be formally negotiated after Brexit, which is why Labour and other opposition parties say just passing the withdrawal agreement is even more of a blind Brexit. We don't know where we're ending up. The other thing they're worried about is the fact that even if this withdrawal agreement passes today, it still doesn't mean we can guarantee we wouldn't leave on the 22nd of May with no deal, because the withdrawal agreement still needs to be turned into UK law, and that would be another big parliamentary battle.
Chris, thank you very much. Let's go to Brussels and find out how all this last-minute drama is being seen by the EU. We can join our Europe correspondent, Damien Grammaticus. What's the reaction there, Damien?
Well, here we've just been hearing from Michel Barnier. He's been speaking on a visit to Poland, and he said, watching this, what the EU is hoping for, he says, is a positive outcome, a yes vote to something today or in the next few days. But he said what the EU's primary desire is that this withdrawal agreement does go through. That's the cleanest option for the EU. It gives that May 22nd date and the prospect of the UK leaving with a withdrawal agreement with a transition period. If not, Mr Barnier has been making clear, then the UK is on a different track. That April the 12th deadline will kick in, and he said it will then be up to the UK in the coming days to chart a clear path forward. Now, he also pointed out that that could be, he said, if the UK chose a path like a customs union. The EU has seen those votes in the past few days. He said it would be open to negotiating the principle of one, and he has indicated to speaking to EU ambassadors here in the last 24 hours, he thinks that could be done very quickly, but we would then be looking at the prospect of the EU having to agree, EU leaders, potentially a long extension to sort things out, 6 months, 9 months, 12 months possibly, and that of course would involve the UK agreeing to take part in European Parliament elections in May.
Thank you very much, Damien. Well, as you can hear, things are very vocal around here. The voices are getting louder and it is getting busier. Leave supporting demonstrators are gathering in Parliament Square just behind me. They're protesting over the failure of Brexit being delivered today, and our correspondent Sarah Walton is with the demonstrators. Sarah.
Yes, Joanna, these are some of the thousands of people gathering this lunchtime for a series of protests and marches across central London. You might be able to hear we've got a marching band actually just about to arrive here in Parliament Square. Now, there are some pro-Remain support groups here, but the vast majority at the moment are Brexit supporters. People who say they were planning to come to London today for a celebration of the day the UK would leave the EU. Now, we know that isn't happening, and after 2 years of negotiation, the Brexit process is no clearer. And I've been speaking to people who've come here from across the country who say they are frustrated and even angry that the government hasn't kept its Brexit promise.
I think those people need to understand what democracy means and how angry people are the way they've behaved.
The Queen should get involved and tell them, listen, right, I don't want anarchy on these streets, so she should give the order and leave.
Basically, our government has betrayed us. We voted to leave. If they go second referendum, it's going to take them 6 months to do their canvassing, and then if we vote to to leave, what was the point of that?
I believe that we should have a no deal. And once we're out, then we can talk about deals. You know, there's no point in talking about deals if you've got a deal. Once you're out of the EU, let's discuss. Let the EU understand how important we are to them.
I can tell the politicians this: Judgment Day will come, because the election will come, and those who voted against the people will get their P45. They will go.
Well, as you can hear, there are more and more people arriving here as the afternoon goes on. Amongst those getting here this afternoon will be the March to Leave protesters who've travelled almost the whole length of the country. So it'll be a very busy afternoon here in central London.
Indeed, Sarah, thank you very much. It is another dramatic day here in Parliament. I'll be back with more from Westminster at the end of the programme. And just to let you know, there'll be a special programme on BBC One and the BBC News channel bringing you the results of the vote in the House of Commons. It starts from 2:15 this afternoon. And you can also follow all the action on BBC Radio 5 Live and online.
Joanna.
For now, back to Kate.
Joanna, thank you very much indeed. Joanna Gosling there, of course. And it's 16 minutes past 1, our main story this lunchtime. On the day the UK was supposed to leave the EU, Theresa May is battling to pass a key part of her Brexit deal. MPs will vote on the withdrawal agreement in just over an hour. And coming up, tributes are being paid to the 2 members of the Liverpool indie band Hers, killed in a car crash in the United States.
And in the sports on BBC News, the Lionesses are on the up. England are now 3rd in the world rankings after winning the She Believes Cup for the first time.
Now, 2 weeks after a gunman opened fire, killing 50 people in an attack on 2 mosques in Christchurch, a service of remembrance has been held to honour the victims. Speaking at the open-air service, the Prime Minister, Jacinda Ardern, said New Zealand was not immune to the virus of hate, but could be the nation that found the cure. Howell Griffiths was at the service and has sent this report.
Linda Susan Armstrong, Musa Nur Awale.
The names of the fallen, the 50 who came to pray. As New Zealand remembered the victims of the mosque shootings, its Prime Minister called on the nation to stay united, far beyond these days of mourning.
We will remember the tears of our nation and the new resolve we have formed. And we remember that ours is a home that does not and cannot claim perfection, but we can strive to be true to the words embedded in our national anthem. Men of every creed and race, gather here before thy face, asking thee to bless this place. God defend our free land.
2 weeks ago, parts of this park were a crime scene. Today, it was a place of reflection and resilience.
Unfortunately, we've lost some good friends and family dear to us. So we're here just to show support, and we appreciate everything from the New Zealand community. It's unbelievable.
Feels important to us because New Zealand's quite an open and accepting society, and that a minority group we're targeted is something that affects us all, and we feel like that's not really part of who we are.
Since the shooting, people here have been desperate to show the world, to show each other their rejection of racism and the violent act of terror which changed so many lives. Adib Sami was shot in the back as he hugged his son, shielding him from the bullets. He watched the gunman walk around the mosque, hunting down the living.
This is my wife.
But he tells me the legacy of that day will be love, not hate.
If the shooter could imagine that this will happen, he will never shoot us. We became more unified, and the community is one. You feel that Christchurch is a one city, New Zealand, one country. And by the way, I'm sure it will change the world.
The Al Noor Mosque has now been reclaimed as a place of worship rather than fear. But armed police officers still stand guard over the city as it tries to recover, to heal. Howell Griffith, BBC News, Christchurch.
Donald Trump has accused his political opponents of using the investigation into alleged collusion between his election campaign and Russia to try to illegally seize power. The president made the comments at his first political rally since the end of Robert Mueller's inquiry. The special counsel didn't find evidence of conspiracy, but did not draw any conclusion on whether President Trump had obstructed justice. Our correspondent Chris Buckley reports now from Washington.
Please welcome the President of the United States, Donald J. Trump.
This rally in Michigan felt like a victory lap for a president still celebrating the main findings of the Mueller report. Democrats say questions remain after the special counsel refused to be drawn on whether Donald Trump tried to obstruct justice by interfering with investigations.
After 3 years of lies and smears and slander, the Russia hoax is finally dead. The collusion delusion is over.
And he even suggested that it had been a plan by those who lost the 2016 election to grab power.
The crazy attempt by the Democrat Party and the fake news media right back there and the deep state to overturn the results of the 2016 election have failed the greatest election that we've had.
But for all the talk of what did or didn't happen in the 2016 election, this speech often sounded like the start of campaigning for 2020. Mr. Trump attacked the Democrats' policies and promised once again to build a barrier between the US and Mexico, warning at one stage that if groups of migrants weren't stopped from illegally crossing into America, he was prepared to close the border completely. Chris Buckler, BBC News, Washington.
The current system of checking newborn babies for hip problems is failing, resulting in too many late diagnoses and corrective surgery. All newborns in England have their hips examined, but only those at risk or with problems receive a scan. The surgeons from Southampton Children's Hospital said the rate of late diagnoses had not improved since screening started more than 30 years ago. Duncan Kennedy has more.
Yes, Myla.
Just 3 months old, and Evie is in for an ultrasound scan on her hips.
Except we're going to check her little hips out.
Mike, the clinician, is looking to see if she has hip dysplasia, where the ball and socket joint doesn't form properly.
Oh, that's lovely. We're going to the other side.
Kirsten, the surgeon, has good news.
It's all great, so we don't need to see her again. Her hips are beautiful. Okay, thank you very much.
For Mum Danielle, it's a relief. It's good news.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Now, can you look at me? Can you stand up?
But 7-year-old Leah Humphrey's story is very different.
Stand on one leg.
She wasn't screened after birth, and her dysplasia was missed.
How uncomfortable was it? How much pain was there?
There wasn't much pain, but there was some, and it was comfy when I was walking, actually, because I like hopping.
It's taken 2 operations to repair Leah's hips.
It's terrible, really. They should have found it out as a baby, like a tiny baby, newborn baby, really, and then she wouldn't have had to go through what she's had.
Recreated the socket here.
Alex Arvold is the surgeon who's produced today's research. He says it shows hundreds of children are being missed by the current selective screening programme.
So what we have wanted to highlight is just how many children there are that are missed despite the current national selective screening programme for something that actually is so readily and easily treatable in infancy.
But today's research also throws up a dilemma for the government. Should it now introduce universal screening for all newborn babies? Public Health England says no, arguing that whilst all parents can get their baby tested, offering a universal scan can cause more harm. And evidence shows it can lead to 20 times more babies being unnecessarily treated. So what to do? Join the likes of Germany and Austria in testing all children, or continue scanning selectively? Getting it wrong can mean more cases like Leah, with years of pain and surgery. Duncan Kennedy, BBC News in Southampton.
Now, both members of the up-and-coming Liverpool indie band Hers have been killed in a car crash in the United States. Stephen Fitzpatrick and Alden Louding died along with their manager as they were travelling between gigs. Ashley John-Baptiste reports.
The Liverpool-based duo Hers will live in most bands' dream, tour in the US, playing live music for their fans. But on their way to a gig in California, duo Stephen Fitzpatrick and Alden Louding, alongside their tour manager, were killed in a car crash on an Arizona freeway. Their record label said they died in the early hours of Wednesday. The Arizona Department of Public Safety says it's investigating. The label, Heist or Hit, said they were heartbroken and their energy, vibrancy and talent came to define the label. Having recently released their debut album, they were featured earlier this week by BBC Music during a festival in Austin, Texas. There they spoke to BBC Radio 1's Hugh Stevens.
We've been selling out shows on the East Coast so far, which is it's been a really good run so far. We're excited.
Wow, so it's proper
big.
life on the road for Hers?
Yeah, big time. That's why I lost my voice so much as well. Yeah.
They came across as such a wonderful, warm couple of human beings, you know, and really good friends, and so I was so saddened to hear.
24-year-old Stephen from Cumbria and 25-year-old Alden from Norway met in Liverpool as students. Since news of the crash, tributes have been flooding in.
I saw them last October, one of the best gigs I've ever been to, and it's just so awful and tragic.
I discovered them last year and they were a bit of a soundtrack to my summer, and really happy songs and good memories as well.
Playing to thousands of adoring fans across North America and even featuring in the music magazine NME, this band will continue to have a special place in the lives of their many followers. Ashley John-Baptiste, BBC News.
Welcome back to Westminster, where MPs have been debating ahead of that vote on part of Theresa May's Brexit deal due to take place in about an hour's time. And you can probably hear and see behind me the Leave Means Leave demonstrators have just left Parliament Square, and they are heading past the House of Commons, possibly loud enough for them to be heard inside that building, which is where the withdrawal agreement will be voted on in the next hour. Norman Smith is with me again. It's getting closer, isn't it, Norman? Might she even do it?
I think she'll fall just short today, but you sense Mrs May is inching ever closer to getting her deal through as Brexiteers sort of scramble aboard the good ship May. If she fails, as I think she will, then the initiative moves to Parliament on Monday, and then the pressure is on MPs to agree on something, an alternative agenda after the shambles of last week when they couldn't agree on anything. They know they are under the cosh because Mrs May is now breathing down their neck. So there are moves to try and get everyone to agree on one amendment, to get people who want a second referendum to support a customs union and people who support a customs union to support a referendum. So both sides could accept a delay that results results in a customs union subject to a referendum. But we are now basically in a Brexit race. Who can get a majority for their deal first? Can the parliamentarians get a majority on Monday? Or will Mrs May come back later in the week and try to get a majority for her sort of Brexit? So both sides are going at it hell for leather.
Norman, thank you very much. Let's catch up with the weather. It's a beautiful sunny day here. Darren has the weather for all of us.
Thanks very much indeed, Joanna. Yes, the weather's cheering us up a bit today. Beautiful blue skies for many parts of the country, and after a chilly start, it's turning out to be quite a warm afternoon as well. In many places, temperatures today will be up at around 18 degrees, but things will change over the weekend. Now, at the moment, we've got this gentle, but fairly warm southwesterly breeze, but look what happens over the weekend. Much colder air floods down from the north, and as we move into Sunday, well, these are the typical afternoon temperatures, 10 degrees. Some places a little bit colder, some places a little bit warmer. The change comes in behind this band of cloud here. The colder air is to the north of that. Now, this cloud is moving its way southwards very slowly. It's bringing a little drizzly weather towards the highlands of Scotland, more cloud filtering into Scotland and Northern Ireland, but some sunshine for eastern Scotland, quite warm here, and in the sunshine for England and Wales, temperatures 16 to 18 degrees widely. Overnight tonight, well, we see that band of cloud continuing to drift slowly southwards, but a damp and drizzly weather heading across Scotland and into Northern Ireland. England and Wales dry, colder, clearer skies, some more mist and fog patches, particularly towards the west, and as you can see, it's going to be quite chilly. Temperatures in some rural areas again just below freezing. So a chilly start to the weekend, but some sunshine beginning to break through, some areas of mist and fog around as well, particularly across parts of the Midlands, the West Country early on in the day, soon lifting, mind you, some hill fog perhaps in the northwest of England. There's our main band of cloud producing a little rain and drizzle. Already the sunshine is following for northern Scotland, some peppering of showers here. Those could turn wintry in Shetland during the afternoon. Yes, it's getting cold enough for that. This is the main band of cloud here. There won't be much rain and drizzle on it as it heads its way into northern England and North Wales. South of that, we'll see some spells of sunshine. It should be another lovely day. The warmth focused towards the southeast, 18, maybe even 19 degrees north of our band of cloud. Even with some sunshine, those temperatures will be much, much lower. Now, we've got that weather front, and it is just a band of cloud by this stage, continuing to push its way southwards. High pressure then building in behind, so Sunday should be a dry day. But there'll be more cloud across more southern parts of England and Wales. A chillier, sunnier start elsewhere, but some patchy fair weather cloud will build and spread out a little bit. It'll be a dry day with some light winds, but it will be cooler everywhere. Perhaps only 7 degrees in Aberdeen and Newcastle. All this at a time when the clocks change on Saturday night, Sunday morning, and we move into British summertime. Joanna.
Here at Westminster, demonstrators are making their voices heard. Later, MPs will have their say. On the day the UK was supposed to leave the EU, we will leave you now with some of the key events and images from the past 3 years on the road to Brexit.
The British people have spoken, and the answer is we're out.
It's been more than 1,000 days since the UK voted to leave the EU. It was a result that changed the political landscape and ushered in a new Prime Minister who promised to respect the will of the people.
Brexit means Brexit, and we're going to make a success of it.
But success isn't so easily earned. She's faced rebellions at home.
I have never felt more ashamed to be a member of the Conservative Party.
And isolation and resistance in Europe.
I've been wondering what that special place in hell looks like for those who promoted Brexit without even a sketch of a plan how to carry it.
Her deal has been rejected twice.
The noes have it, the noes have it, the noes have it, the noes have it. Unlock!
Cannot sign up to the withdrawal agreement, and it's all because the Prime Minister decided to go for that backstop.
And a firm promise has been broken.
The United Kingdom is leaving the European Union on the 29th of March. 29th of March 2019.
A Prime Minister who's even promised to resign to deliver Brexit. A country divided, a parliament in chaos.